This video will actually help us introduce the aggregate function. So before we go in and explain this data sheet, let's see the similarities between the subtotal and the aggregate function. So if you look at this sheet over here, you can understand that both the subtotal and the aggregate function can help us achieve these individual functions, right? So they work exactly the same, applying both these, uh, applying either of these functions, either subtotal or the aggregate. But with the aggregate function, we also have access to some additional functions as we have listed over here. So the function number starts from 12 and goes all the way up to 19. It also has an additional parameter called options, which we'll be seeing in a little bit. So that gives us some additional functionality with the aggregate function. Okay, so now let's get back to our data sheet. So we have the same list of products, and then the sale column has been spread across three different columns just for the sake of illustration here. So it's the same set of values. So for the first column, I have used sum. Second column, I have used subtotal with the function number 9, which is for sum, right? And then in the third column, I've used aggregate with the same function number 9, which is for sum, right? So it returns the same result using the same, using all the three different functions. So now let's apply a filter and have a look. So if I apply a filter, okay, I can see that only with the subtotal function, I am getting a filtered aggregate. So even with just the aggregate function, we cannot achieve that, right? So you will have to understand the use case scenario and apply either the subtotal or the aggregate function, yeah, depending on what is it that you're looking for. So if you want a filtered list to give you the filtered aggregate, then subtotal function is the right choice. Okay, so let's see a little more about the aggregate function as to where we can use it. So let's do one thing. Let's create an error in one of the rows. So I'm just going to divide something by 0 here just to create an error. Okay, so the moment I have an error in any one of the rows, it is not going to calculate the sum, right? So it's basically going to ignore all other values and it is not going to return any value here. So let me just repeat the same thing for the same row for the second column. Same thing happens for the subtotal function as well, right? So let me just repeat this for the third column, and there you go. Here you can see that the error has been ignored by using the aggregate function. So that's where we'll understand how the additional option or the additional parameter actually comes into play. So if you look at it, with the aggregate function, apart from the function number and the range, we have also specified an additional parameter, which is the option. So in most often the option number that you will use is number 6. So what does number 6 refer to over here? Ignore error values. So more often than not, you will be using option number 6. So this is where the aggregate function can have an edge over subtotal and sum. So if there are any error values, you can use the option parameter to ignore them, right? So you can try and apply other options as well and see how it differs based on the uh, options that it provides, right? So this is how the aggregate function basically comes into use.